Hey YouTube, Phallica5678 here, and it's time for another review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new Maggie Rogers album, Surrender. This is the second full-length LP from Maggie Rogers following 2019's Heard It in a Past Life, an album which solidified her as a staple in the indie pop singer-songwriter genre. Heard It in a Past Life was her first full-length piece of work following the Pharrell video that went viral that brought her to fame. If you're not sure what I'm referring to, you could literally just type like Pharrell Maggie Rogers into YouTube and the video will come up. It's basically video footage of Pharrell coming in and working with the seniors at the Clive Davis School of Music at NYU. She plays him her song Alaska, which was on her original EP back in 2014 or something. A lot of people claim Pharrell cried or was on the verge of tears, but basically he immediately recognizes her talent and tells her no notes, you slayed. Maggie talks more about this moment and how it propelled her to where she is today in the commentary version of her 2020 release, Notes from the Archives 2011 through 2016. Through this release, we got to hear all the different sounds and aesthetics she was playing around with in her teen years and early 20s. When I was prepping for this video and listened to Heard in a Past Life a few times, as well as Notes from the Archive 2011 through 2016, it all kind of clicked once I listened to Surrender. I found that the sonic aesthetic of Surrender makes complete sense and definitely seems like a very natural development for an artist like Maggie Rogers. On Notes from the Archives, you hear music she recorded when she was 16, and then you listen to Her in Past Life, which was very much her indie pop moment, and then you realize she's 28 now. The stuff that we know from Maggie Rogers is not necessarily who she is anymore. It's who she was. And if you listen to her commentary on Notes from the Archives, she makes it pretty clear that she honors these past versions of herself as the artist she is today and acknowledges that it's what brought her here. But you can also hear all the different sonic aesthetics and things she experimented with in high school and college, and I think it's really cool that you can go through an artist's discography and make all of these, sonic connections that you can't necessarily put into words. It's one of the reasons I love music so much. So yeah, thanks Maggie. Okay, so now that we finally made it to the actual album I'm reviewing, this entire album was written and produced by Maggie Rogers herself and Kid Harpoon, alongside some special guests, which I will get to when we get to the songs. Fun fact, Kid Harpoon was actually the co-writer and producer on Harry's House, Harry Styles' new album, which explains the moment in her song association video where she's last time I heard this song I was on Harry Styles' couch, and everyone was like, what? There's the connection. Overall, sonically, Surrender is much more stripped down than Heard It in a Past Life when it comes to the production overall, as well as the work on her vocals. But I think it's because her vocals are so strong on this album. Extra production would, on some tracks at least, I think, take away from the overall, quality of the tracks. So while this album is more stripped down than Heard It in a Past Life, it does not necessarily mean it's a simpler album. However, as I've been listening to it, sometimes it does feel that way, but I honestly think it's because it's so sonically cohesive and just generally as a body of work flows and fits so well together, even more than Heard It in a Past Life. I do think Heard It in a Past Life was fairly sonically cohesive and all of that, but at least thematically this album is even more cohesive. On first listen, I do think I was a little underwhelmed with this album, at least compared to Heard It in a Past Life, but after listening to the album many times, I now do feel like it's because she's playing around with a different style ultimately within her own Maggie world. I think as a generation, and also as just music listeners in 2022, we can often feel music that isn't as experimental or with crazy production can immediately be registered as not as impressive. But I really do I try to encourage myself, and I am encouraging you to kind of try and strip that away, because ultimately music is not just bloop bloop blop, and again I have to remind myself that a lot, which is why I think this record is really important for this year, and I think it came out at like the perfect time, but I'll get into that later. Let's get into the actual album. The first track, Overdrive, is a great album opener that very much brings the listener into the sonic aesthetic and world of this album. You immediately get the sense that Maggie is very much heading more towards the indie alt rock side of the singer-songwriter world than the indie alt pop that she was in and heard it in a past life, but we're still getting those classic Maggie Rogers backing vocals, harmonies, and production stylings, and as the album continues, those things remain, again, sonically cohesive. The second track, That's Where I Am, was the first of 3 singles we got on this album rollout. I think it's a great choice for a lead single when you consider the rest of the album. If the album is an essay, this song very much is the thesis statement. It very clearly and honestly, simply put, hands you the general theme of this album, which is, hey, it's Maggie Rogers. Here's an update on my life. This is not a concept album, and if you have to call it one, the concept of this album is Maggie and her head and how the world interacts with her head. As I keep saying, this is very clear throughout the entire album, even down to the album aesthetics, including the album cover is literally her face, no words. I think that was a great choice, and I do really appreciate this approach because we are at a time musically where a lot of artists are playing around with fiction and narrative in their writings, which, don't get me wrong, is really awesome and I love, but it is a little refreshing, honestly, to hear an album by an artist that is basically just laying on the line, this is how I feel, this is what I think. The next track, Want Want, was the second single we got from this album rollout and has the guest writer and producer Sam Jaff, aka Del Watergap, which I didn't realize this until I listened to the commentary on Notes from the Archive, but Maggie Rogers started out in this band with Sam Jaff in Del Watergap. Maggie was one of the co-founders of Del Watergap. The two of them were in Clive Davis together. And then she went solo, basically, and Sam remained under the name Del Watergap. So another little cute connect. I love the production on this track. It very much gives me 70s rock vibes mixed with 2010s pop. I don't know where I got that, but I thought it, so I'm telling you it. The next track, Anywhere With You, was another track co-written and co-produced with Sam Jaff as well as Kid Harpoon, and I really do think you can hear the Del Watergap in this song, and in fact this is probably my favorite track on the album, and I am not unique in that given its space on her popular tracks on Spotify. I think right now it's number 4 above That's Where I Am, which was a single. This one isn't, so I think that says it all. This track has one of my favorite lyrics on the album. I'd rather hear the wind than that song I'm supposed to know by some fucking bro. I felt very seen in that lyric. I immediately thought of Jack Harlow and just the very quick rise and fall of that man. He's fine without the hype. He'll be fine. However, ultimately in the end, I think the instrumental build and just the build structurally in the song is what makes the song so good. And I think you can thank the collab of Sam Jaff and Maggie for that. Going back to their roots, love that for them. Track 5, Horses, is giving track 5. When I say it's giving track 5, I mean that it is one of the most emotionally vulnerable songs in the album. This is one of the tracks on the album where you can most clearly hear her connecting with her folk country roots with an A+ vocal performance. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, how this album really screams you're a grown woman. Specifically the lyrics on this track really remind me that she is no longer a young 20-something rising star. She is a solidified star and she's a grown-ass woman. The next track, Be Cool, has a notable collaborator, Jon Batiste. However, to be honest, the song is probably the most underwhelming, in my opinion, on this album, but the Britney Spears call-out makes up for it. The next track, Shatter, I love the production on. It gives me very strong 80s vibes, and in fact has Florence Welch herself from Florence and the Machine on tambourine and additional vocals. The chorus on this track slays so hard and honestly makes the song, especially her vocal performance on the last chorus on this song, love it. The next track, Begging for Rain, is one of the 3, I guess, very stripped down songs. It was the only solo written track on this whole album, Maggie very poetically brings up this idea lyrically in this song of the general frustration with late capitalism in America and how it innately makes us feel, no matter how much we're told to still get up and clock in at 8 a.m., you know. It's rough out here, and even the rich people who aren't actually like working like 9 to 5s or whatever are still feeling that. Like, I feel like this is kind of Maggie's version of Beyonce's Break My Soul, which, you know, ironically their albums came out on the same day, so that's an interesting little connect. But yeah, I think this is probably the most relatable track on the album, just generally. And yeah, I love this idea of begging for rain, of begging for everything to be washed away so we can start anew. Hashtag relatable. I've got a friend has cute little guests, Claro and Claude, as the, like, you know, the little voices you hear on this track are the two of them. It's such a thematically sweet song and is definitely, in my opinion, the folkiest song on this album. And I don't know, I like the idea that the folkiest song, the song that sounds the most like, you know, the music she was playing around with in like middle and high school, is a song about her best friend. So yeah, I just think that's cute. Honey gives me pretty strong like 90s and early 2000s like rock pop inspo. It's interesting that like one track we got a 70s inspo, one track 80s, one track 90s. I wouldn't be surprised if that was, you know, just like naturally inspiration that she was finding, and that it was, you know, intentional that it went like in chronological order sonically. I don't know. On Symphony, we have our last guest writer and producer, Gabe Goodman. And finally, the last track, Different Kind of World, is a lovely personal closer where she goes more in depth of the themes that she's discussing on Begging for Rain. It very much ties together the whole album thematically. Ultimately, she's a different kind of girl than she was in 2019 on Heard It in a Past Life, and we can hear it. It gives me I Know the End by Phoebe Bridgers energy, especially like the, you know, the soft and almost like borderline like brooding sonic vibes into the big booming instrumentation moment and back into the softness to finish off not only the song but the album. I think, you know, soft finishers are perfect for albums with this sort of sonic aesthetic. Like I said, I think on Beatopia, B finishes the whole album off with a nice guitar strum, and we get that here. So, and like I said on that video, love it. I love a good album finisher with a guitar strum. So yeah, overall, this album in general feels quite refreshing. It really feels like she's solidifying herself as a singer-songwriter icon of sorts, of this decade here on this album, and that's iconic. Like I said, the rollout was great. The album aesthetic feels very clear. I think it was released at the perfect time of the year. It definitely feels like a late summer album. I am excited to see if she does something a bit more conceptual in the future, but until then, I am super happy to bump this alongside her other two bodies of work. And I would really recommend listening to Heard in a Past Life, Notes from the Archives, and then this, because it really reminds you of how versatile she is as an artist, but she's still able to stay within her little, like, you know, creative world that she just like naturally has, and that's really special. I mean, I think that's why she rose to fame so quickly, and I think she deserves it. So yeah, I'm gonna give this album a strong 7. But yeah, anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Comment any like new releases coming up that you want me to review. Follow me on TikTok if you so desire. I post silly Swiftie content there. So yeah, thanks so much for watching and have a good day.